Special guest tonight on 1 Week at a Time is injured Collingwood ruckman Josh Fraser. G'day, Josh. Thanks for joining us.
No worries, Quarters. Thanks for having me.
G'day, Josh. How are you?
Richie, how are you, mate?
How's the knee? You going to play this week?
Mate, I'm very hopeful. I'd love to think I'm a good chance to play. Obviously, main training session on Wednesday, and I guess from there we'll have to see how it pulls up. But, yeah, mate, I'm really keen to play and get back.
And the injury's been the PCL injury, which is the ruckman's curse. And a few years ago, the AFL brought in the new centre circle to prevent this type of injury. Has it helped at all?
Well, I think it has. It's definitely reduced the impact that you have because you don't have the two ruckmen getting a 10-metre run up at each other. But I guess what it has done is probably introduced the initiation of contact at centre bounces. You find a lot of ruckmen trying to jump into each other now to get the advantage. So that's a skill in itself. But I guess it's probably the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
How's morale at the club? Has the Mick Malthouse coaching saga becoming a bit of a distraction now?
Not so much internally. I think most of the guys are aware of it, but that's on the periphery for us. I think we do a pretty good job of focusing in each week on what we need to do, and I don't think we're in that much of a hole. I mean, we've lost some games this year we should have won. The weekend was disappointing, and we obviously had a lot of players out, but I think the development's there. The younger kids coming through are getting game time into them, and I still think Mick's coaching as well as he has. He certainly hasn't lost the support of the playing group, and I think hopefully if we can get some players back into the side sooner rather than later, we can probably generate some good footy. Well,
one very recent player said that Mick's changed his body language, perhaps in the plan of attracting other suitors. Let's listen to Shane Wakeland talking about his former coach.
Maybe it's a point in time where he's looking for that new challenge. And
what makes you say that, though? Just because he's relaxed and behaving in a different way, that makes you think that he's ready to move on away from coaching at full stop or another club?
No, I think I know for sure that he wants to stay in the system. He loves coaching. He's still got the desire. But we spoke about it before. When we lack clarity in our lives, we all love direction. We all love to know where we're heading, and when there's a little bit of question mark around that, and this is the first time in his coaching career he's had a little bit of uncertainty, maybe he's looking a new direction. Maybe he's looking for a new challenge.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Shane Wakeland, who obviously played under Mick for so many years, a new challenge. Look, personally, I think Mick Malthouse would want to coach at Collingwood. But if he doesn't get the job next year and he's out of contract, I would then think he would coach another AFL club.
I think that's for sure, yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Josh? And the other question I've got for you, is there a day go by where you don't get asked about the coaching situation at Collingwood?
Yeah, it's... Richard probably fully aware of that scenario. It's it's obviously in the forefront of people's minds, particularly Collingwood supporters. But as I alluded to, I think Mick's doing a really good job down there. He probably hasn't had the cattle in the last week or so to make it work, and probably the players also have to take responsibility. I think we really let him down and the rest of the coaching staff down in different games this year, and we've lost some games we should have won. When we played some very good footy, we've been able to win games by good margins. But I guess in terms of Wakes' comments, he's making them from a distance. Certainly within the club itself and within the playing group, we haven't seen a change in Mick at all. In fact, I've seen him probably more energised and more enthused about the challenge that lies ahead as I've ever seen him. Now,
Nathan Buckley, a lot of speculation about him coaching next year. You obviously had under him for a long time. Do you think he'll make a good coach?
Oh, absolutely. There's one bloke I wouldn't bet against, and that's Bucks. He's as driven as I've ever seen anyone in terms of competing and trying to get the best out of himself. And he would have realised that there's probably things in areas that he needs to improve on, and I would have thought that he's probably doing that with his work with the AIS and through I think the Vic Country squad he's working with as well. So I've got no doubt he'll make a terrific coach when his time's come.
One thing that I reckon you think he can improve in is longer meetings. Weren't you critical of him when he was captain about his long meetings?
Mate, I've had to probably meet him halfway with the meetings because I hated all meetings and he liked all meetings, so I've had to come to the party a little bit. So there's certainly a place for him, but I'd like to think they're a bit more constructive than just sitting there for half an hour.
I remember when I coached Richo, about 12 years ago. It's a long time ago. You used to love the meetings, didn't you?
I used to look out at the Nilex clock there. We had our meeting.
No wonder you only lasted 5 minutes.
Well, that's when I had a real go at you. And I thought he was asleep, but he was looking at the clock tick by.
I was looking to see how warm it was outside, Woolsey.
They got worse, Rich, haven't they, the meetings?
Oh, they got a lot worse.
More of them.
Do you reckon Scotty Burns, he could coach as well? Would he have shorter meetings, maybe?
He would have shorter meetings. But he was in a similar boat to me, Burnsy, in terms of meetings, but he'd make an outstanding coach, there's no doubt about that. And I think even when you see what he's done with the young West Coast midfield group over there, he's really got them ticking along pretty well, and I've got no doubt he'd make an outstanding coach.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, well, you know what's coming next? Grant Thomas, that famous game, Anzac Day. Let's have a listen to Grant Thomas first, and then we'll go through the incident point by point and see whether Josh Fraser did dog it.
To see Josh Fraser dog it in that first 3 or 4 minutes of that game, terrible for him, but it really set the scene with Collingwood.
How did that make you feel? There couldn't be many worse things said about a footballer, I reckon. Richo, firstly, would you agree that would be the worst thing you could say about a footballer?
Definitely. I mean, as a footballer, you know that you're going to get questioned for these sort of things, courage issues, because every single time you go for the ball, you're being scrutinised. But I think to describe it like Grant did, I personally thought it was a bit of a disgrace. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I guess initially I was pretty shocked and disappointed by the comments, but after a little while it was really water off a duck's back, because I just didn't think there was any truth in them. I thought they were probably, obviously poorly timed, and I thought the way he summed up the incident itself was just ridiculous. So it was easy enough for me to move on, and I've got enough faith in the coaching staff and the playing group around me that if they thought there was an issue there, that they would have come and grabbed me before anyone. So it was...
Well, here it is. Let's have a look at it. Ball loose there. David Hill, the Essendon ruckman, he doesn't go near the footy. The footy's there to be got. He decides to go over the top of the footy and hit into you, Josh. Yep. I was sitting in the commentary booth, Channel 10 commentary booth, with Luke Darcy, ruckman, terrific ruckman. This is what Luke had to say when that happened.
Little toe poke kick comes out in the direction of Hill. Got a bad bounce. He takes his eye off the ball and went for Fraser. Love it, Murray. He tackles and holding the ball.
Not great from David Hill there before, an opportunity to really put his head over the ball and attack it. Took his eye off it. He's in poor form, and when you're out of confidence, that's not a good way to get it back. He should have just smashed him with his head over the footy.
Well, Luke got it right. You got it right. Thomas got it wrong, and you were unfairly maligned, as simple as that. And you're aware of that. You know that. So, as you say, water off a duck's back, and good on you for that. But it was disappointing. But you also, in the same game, you got criticised by one of your former teammates in Shane Wakelin. Yep. And he was very critical of you.
From the start?
At the start. This is at the opening bounce of the game.
Well, again, let's go through this point by point. Let's listen to Shane Wakelin's grab first on SEN.
Josh Fraser, for me, was incredibly disappointing. I watched him at the first bounce, did not get off the ground.
Did not get off the ground. Let's have a look at this opening bounce.
Down she goes. And up you went. I mean, it wasn't the greatest climb of all time, Josh, but you got off the ground.
He got off the ground higher than David Hill. So, Shane Wakelin, you were wrong. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Former teammate?
Well, Wakes has been pretty outspoken of recent times, and I think he's probably a bit of self-promotion in there as well. I think Wakes is probably on a short-term contract with SEN and is probably trying to shore up a longer-term deal. It seems to be his style. He had a crack at Reece Shaw, he had a crack at me, and I guess his comments about Mick also. So that's the way Wakes wants to go. That's fine. But one thing I will say is I had great respect for him as a player and all those sorts of things. But I think when you cross the boundary into a media position, particularly early on, I think you can probably be a bit more constructive in your criticism and critique of the game.
You've played in the ruck, haven't you, Richo?
I have. I've gone in there a few times, Josh, and I sit back and I look at the ruckman. I'd never really been in there, but the last couple of years I've had to go in there a few times. So I've got a new admiration for the courage it takes. You know, two big guys, over 100 kilos, crashing in. And especially every time Josh is jumping up there, he knows he's got a sore PCL. He's risking that being injured every time, and Troy Simmons has gone through that at Richmond. And it takes a lot of courage to go in there in the ruck, and people to sit back and make comments that haven't played there. I don't think they should until they probably have.
It can make you look pretty silly too, the ruck at times. because sometimes you're jumping early as a tactic and your opponent will slip you and you float past the contest, and sometimes you're waiting for the initial jump and you find yourself a bit flat-footed. So all these things come into play, and as Richo said, he's probably been in there and found a new appreciation for ruckman.
In a perfect world, Collingwood's got Dean Cox.
Yep.
In a perfect world, you've got Dean Cox. Where do you play? Because for 10 years, people have said, well, you're really not big enough to be a ruckman.
They haven't quite found a backup for him, have they?
No, there's been no backup ruckman for you for 10 years. Where do you think you could have played the last 10 years, if not as the number one ruckman?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. Forward's the obvious answer to that, but I've really enjoyed my time in the ruck, and I think I have developed in that area, and I think I've still got a lot of improvement to do. So, you know, in the ideal scenario, and you've got a Dean Cox, which most clubs would love to have, you know, I'd be playing a percentage of game time deep forward and probably even pushing up to the centre forward position.
Cam Wood was used yesterday. One stage, Cruiser slipped up forward and took a mark and got a filthy stare from his skipper. He put the hands out, saying, "Where were you, mate?"
Yeah, very impressive, Matty Cruiser. I mean, I'd love to have been out there yesterday, but even just watching his work rate and the way he moves, and Woody just got caught, let Cruiser goal side there.
Well, you can see there, Woods at the back there, he's not within 5 metres, and skipper Maxwell's got every right to turn around and say, well, hey, where are you? You've got to give us some support there. So the intensity of Cam Wood, you've got to question it in that incident. And look, he came from Brisbane, and he's been at Collingwood for a couple of years now, and they just can't find that second backup ruckman for you.
No, Woody's made inroads, and I think he needs to probably play more game time as well. He probably needs more opportunities, but I think they've elected to go with Lee Brown because he gives you that flexibility of going forward and back, and whilst you probably don't set up as offensively when he's in the ruck, he still gives you that option to throw him back or forward.
Were you still in the match with 5 minutes to go?
Probably not with 5 minutes to go, but...
Your coach thought so?
Yeah, look, and to be honest, sitting there, I think particularly, and I know it's not 5 minutes to go, but the second quarter, we did have a fair bit of momentum, and we just couldn't put any scoreboard pressure on.
I've got to say, you not without a shifty chance in the halfway through the third quarter. I think, was it Leon Davis missed a goal?
I can't believe you're saying that.
They had a shifty chance.
The game was just about gone at the 15-minute mark of the first quarter. The fat lady sang in the commentary box that I was in.
Rex has known to got it wrong before.
Not often. And he didn't get it wrong yesterday.
Let's listen to Mick Malthouse on his view of the game yesterday.
I don't think we're out of the game at all, at any stage until the last 5 minutes. I mean, obviously, that's the coach's perception, but we were getting enough of the football. We just weren't getting enough clean football, and we weren't getting the ball in a clean manner forward.
The coach should always think that they're still in the game, though, shouldn't he?
Not necessarily. Like there are plenty of games I coached when I knew we weren't in it.
You coached the Bears.
I was coaching the Bears for a lot of those. I think you've got to be realistic.
Yeah. I think it's perhaps maybe we took maybe a few of us misunderstood that grab.
Look, a couple of players here, and when that incident came up a few weeks ago when you were accused of dogging it, which you didn't do, a lot of talk about courage of players in football, and I've always been of the belief that 99% of players at some stage don't go hard enough. I know I certainly didn't at times, and very few players could put their hand up and say they went flat out every time. Have you ever been in a game where you've surprised yourself with your courage, and on the other side, have you been disappointed in yourself with your lack of courage?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you play enough footy, there's definitely going to be times where you know you haven't gone hard enough, and you actually on the day you might be thinking, gee, I hope that's not as bad as it felt there. And you know, and so in hindsight, a lot of the time the footage shows it to be not that bad, but. The scrutiny now, it's every single contest. When I first started, one or two games might have been telecast, and not every single contest was scrutinised like we are here tonight, and it's harsh. Like, guys are going to sometimes not go completely 100%.
There's an incident in Richmond's game with Dean Polo, Matthew. Let's have a look at that incident yesterday, and he got dragged straight away.
Yeah, looking at that now, Dean would be the first to admit he probably could have made more of an effort to go at the ball there, but he was told straight away, obviously, by Terry. And no, Dean's a courageous player, and that was just one instance.
Caught in two minds, probably.
One instance, for a second he might have thought he couldn't get there, and then because of that it makes it look bad on the footage. So you make split-second decisions in the game.
A lot of the courageous acts too are the ones where you don't know it's coming because you don't know any different. You're going for the ball, and all of a sudden you get cleaned up. So it's the ones where you've got time to think about it. And as Richo said, you know yourself on the ground, and you run around for probably 5 or 10 minutes thinking, geez, I hope that wasn't as bad as what it was.
Do you rush home and look at the DVD? do you?
You do.
There was
A couple
a
of great
really
examples on the weekend, wasn't
courageous example with Heath Scotland in the game yesterday, Collingwood. This one with Barry Hall before we go to that one. Barry Hall there, eyes on the football, and I thought that was really courageous in the instance. And have a look at Heath Scotland here, running back with the flight, and he gets knocked really hard, eyes on it. Now, I heard Tony Shaw say yesterday that one of the reasons Collingwood got rid of Heath Scotland was because they doubted that he went hard enough, often enough. And yet, you have a look at that in the last quarter when the game's pretty much sewn up. So it does vary. Courage levels can vary from game to game and quarter to quarter.
Now, this is one for you, Josh. You play with Dale Thomas. Can you spot the difference here? This is the first gamer for North Melbourne. Sam Wright.
Uncanny, isn't it?
Have a look at that. I wonder if they had the same milkman.
The boys at the club onto that one, Fraser?
Not yet, mate, but I'm sure if he keeps playing some senior footy, we'll be straight into him. I think he's a Murray Bushranger kid too, I think, from memory, so he's from good area.
Good stock.
Good part of the country, mate.
How's your old mate Sean Rusling going? He's had a wretched run. I think it's 3. I think it is 4 shoulder recos, and he hurt himself on the weekend in the VFL. Another comeback, and there was at one stage thought that he might have done the shoulder again. But it's good news. It was only a fractured cheekbone, still pretty serious. He's had a wretched run, hasn't he?
He's had a shocking run, Ruz, and as we discussed earlier, he can actually play the game. So hopefully you can get to see his talents in the future. But he's in pretty good spirits, I think. Obviously not being the shoulder this time, and I think within a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we'll see him back playing footy again, so that's a real positive.
What about all the other walking wounded at Collingwood? We'll go through a list here, and I think a lot of people were a bit harsh on Collingwood yesterday. You look at all these big names that didn't play, it would have made a hell of a difference to the match-up against Carlton. Where are all these players at? You reckon you'll be back next week with a bit of luck?
Oh, a chance, yeah. I'd like to obviously train on Wednesday and see how I go from there, but I think a few guys are in a similar boat. Metas, Tomo, certainly Anthony, Dids his hamstrings recovering really well, so Trav's probably maybe doubtful this week, but we've got a chance to get 3 or 4 of those guys back going to Perth, so that'll be handy, particularly over there.
It's amazing. If you look at those 9 names at the start of the year, you would have had pretty much every one of them in the top 18 for Collingwood. I mean, you take 9 out of any team, it's hard to win. I mean, it's just impossible.
And that's why Carlton had to win yesterday.
Yeah.
I just thought if Carlton didn't beat Collingwood yesterday, they never would. Just want to ask you one question, Josh. As a team, your handball tallies are low compared to other teams, and you tend to take the ball around the boundary line, short kicks, slow into your forward 50. You get it in there enough, but it gets in slowly. Yeah. Any change of strategy or tactics over the last 18 months in that area?
No, it's not by design, and in fact those tactics you spoke of have actually worked quite well for us, particularly having Trav there, who usually leads pretty hard up to the wing, and I guess we're not being afforded that space that we have been in the past, and it's probably making us look a bit slower, and we probably haven't used the options through the corridor as much as we would have liked, so it certainly hasn't been something that we've done by design, but I think going forward we probably need to just open our vision a little bit, being the ball carrier, and look for those clearer options.
Reece Shaw is a former teammate of yours, and in the newspaper, a confession of sorts, Rob. Took him 5 years to work out that he needed to work a bit harder to make it in the big time.
That surprises me, because look, I don't know Reece Shaw that well, but
you do, Josh. Do you surprised by those comments?
A pretty hard worker.
Yeah, he's a pretty hard worker. I think it's going to that next level as well. I think you can think you're working hard and you're probably working at a level that everyone else is working at, but for sure, who's got great fitness anyway, for him to break that to that next level and become a better player, I guess that's probably what he's alluding to.
He's having a terrific year with Sydney. I know they're just really pleased with the way that he's gone on that half-back line. They get the ball into his hands as much as possible, taking the spot of Ty Canelli. Change of clubs done him really well, really good for him.
He's almost playing that quarterback role for him as well, as you said, they're trying to get the footy into his hands, and I think his disposals improved a hell of a lot as well. I'm not sure if it's been a focus of his over the summer, but he doesn't seem to miss many targets, and his running's as good as I've ever seen it, so hopefully he can continue, and yeah, it's good to see him doing well.
Played on Southern Prestigiacomo much, Matthew?
Yeah, I have a lot. And I reckon he's one of the most underrated defenders, of the last 15 years. And the other one's Max Hudgton. But
they missed him last year, didn't they, Josh?
They did.
You get into him much?
Presty, you never heard him talk. We talked about that with Mick Malthouse a few weeks ago. But
that's a coach's delight, isn't it, Rob?
Well,
9 goals conceded in 8 rounds.
If you can slot someone in at full back and know that he's just not going to have goals kicked against him, well, it's just a luxury that few clubs can have.
He's just got great closing speed. You think you've got him done on the lead, but he just gets there and he just gets the arm in. He's been a sensational defender.
Do you ever say to him, what about trying to win a ball yourself?
You do, yeah. Some of the defenders like Presty doesn't particularly rack up big numbers. You do tell them, you know, why don't you try and get a couple of kicks at some stage, but they're out there to stop you getting kicks, unfortunately.